Good evening. My name is Kevin Adelstein. I'm president of the Cleveland Jewish Publication Company and publisher and CEO of the Cleveland Jewish News. Welcome to CJN Inside Politics 2021 City of Beachwood Mayoral Debate. We're coming to you live from the very art Chesler Board Room at the Cleveland Jewish News in Beachwood, Ohio. Our candidates and our moderator are seated 6 feet apart, and therefore they're not required to ask this evening. Let's meet our candidates. We have the Honorable Mayor Martin S. Horwitz, the Mayor of Beachwood, and Councilman Justin Berns. And our moderator this evening is CJN Managing Editor Bob Jacob. Bob is going to kick things off for us. Thank you for joining us this evening.
Thank you, Kevin. Good evening again, and thank you for joining us tonight. Each candidate will begin with a 2-minute opening statement. Questions will then alternate between the candidates, who will have 1 minute to respond to each question. If need for rebuttal to a statement, the candidate will have 30 seconds to respond. An official timer is providing visual cues to the candidates regarding their remaining time. Tonight's questions have been selected by the CJN editorial staff, with some questions provided by our viewers when they registered for this evening's program. The candidates were informed before the event that questioning will be in reverse alphabetical order, with the first question going to Mr. Horwitz. The evening will end with each candidate providing a 2-minute closing statement. Mr. Horwitz has elected to provide the first opening statement. Mayor Horwitz, your 2 minutes begins now.
Thank you. Community is everything. I'm running for re-election because I love Beachwood. I'm the most qualified candidate, and the stakes could not be higher. Beachwood is a $60 million business with hundreds of employees. It's responsible for the safety and security of over 100,000 people every day. In just the last 4 years as your mayor, I've increased security throughout the city and at the mall by investing in manpower, equipment, and new technology. I built a dog park, community gardens, and block party program. Now we're seeing the expansion of street lighting, sewer improvements, and a fitness court in the park. I've created real economic development that will bring in millions for our city and schools. I formed safety partnerships with schools, businesses, and the Jewish Federation. And finally, I kept the city safe and strong during COVID, earning national recognition. I'm the only candidate in this race with 26 years of real elected experience, which is vital to running a complex city. I am an attorney and I've been president of the Board of Education and City Council. Because of my experience, character, and results, I am endorsed by the Cuyahoga County Democratic Party, many civic leaders, and community groups. They know that I understand how to make Beachwood work for young families, seniors, and everyone in between. Beachwood is a special place to live. I grew up here, and my wife Sandy and I have raised our 2 children. As mayor, my focus is you, creating a safe, successful, and thriving community that we are all proud to call home. Tonight, I hope to share many more of our successes, and you can always learn more about me at my website, mayorhorwitz.com, or call me with any questions. We have so many new programs in the works, and we're making so much progress. With a second term, we can finish them without disruption. I'm excited and honored to serve you, and I thank you for the opportunity to earn your vote again.
Thank you, Mayor Horwitz. Mr. Berns, please provide your opening statement.
Thank you. I want to thank the Cleveland Jewish News for hosting this forum. We are very fortunate to have this prestigious publication serving our city. I also want to thank all of our citizens of Beachwood for taking time out of their schedules to watch this discussion. I hope I have made it obvious over the years that I love the city of Beachwood. I grew up here, purchased my first home here, located my business here, built a new home here, and most importantly, chose with my wife to raise our 3 children in the city of Beachwood. While the current mayor asserts that his experience is helpful in running the city, there are numerous issues related to city operations that are incredibly concerning to all. The reality is that we have a crisis in leadership as the current mayor's actions have hurt the reputation and brand of the city. The current administration is responsible for issues related to money, credibility, and embarrassment to the city, which we all care so much about. You have all heard about issues such as sexual harassment and disrespect of employees, misallocation of funds, process of obtaining proper bids, the decline in public safety. And as a councilman, I interact with city employees regularly. And I can assure you, morale has never been lower. I take no joy in discussing these problems as I want to protect and rebuild the reputation of Beachwood. All of these concerns motivated me to run for mayor. I don't want to minimize job of Beachwood Mayor. The mayor is charged with running an organization that operates 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, and doesn't stop for holidays. It's a marathon. I have run marathons before, and I'm going to run this marathon. I hope I can prove to voters of Beachwood that I have the knowledge, skill set, energy, and passion to restore the operations, safety, and reputation of our city. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Berns. Let's begin the questioning. Mr. Horwitz, what is your biggest accomplishment in the last 4 years as an elected official, and why do you consider that your biggest accomplishment?
I think probably my biggest accomplishment, but this would be a temporary one, would be keeping the city safe during COVID. That was something that no mayor has ever had to plan for. And frankly, what we did was something short of amazing. We were able to very quickly organize our teams and our employees. We were able to obtain computers to go vote. We had to set up policies. We turned our community service department into an organization that helped our seniors. We were able to distribute vaccinations through our fire department, our fire station number 2. We designed a program to help our restaurants to do deliveries and save them the 40% off delivery charges. Everything we did for a year and a half was geared towards the protection and safety of our residents, our businesses, and frankly, the rest of the region. We handed out masks.
Thank you, Mr. Horwitz. Mr. Berns?
Well, as the mayor talks about the Beachwood Delivers program, I want to make mention that that was a great program, and kudos to the administration for doing it. The city of Beachwood has 2,500 businesses. Nothing has happened with the other 2,490 of those businesses done any reach out to the existing businesses in this. And I think it's very important that we include them as well. Fact of the matter is that if you drive around the city right now, you'll see many empty parking lots and empty office buildings. We need to do something about that. And COVID is taking its on our office area of the city. We need to fix that problem as well. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Berns. If you'd like a rebuttal, Mr. Horwitz?
Yeah.
30 seconds.
All right, very quickly, you can drive around the city and see empty buildings because frankly, most companies right now, including the clinic and some of the major companies, are working hybrid. So you're not going to see parking lots full at this point. We know that the buildings in Commerce, the owners are saying they're 95% rented, but people are working from home. That's a serious issue because there may be some tax implications down the road, depending on how it's handled down in Columbus. But basically, we've got hybrid workers now, and that's where we are for the next couple of months.
Thank you, Mr. Horwitz.
I'm not-
Okay, let's move on to the next question. Mr. Berns, how have you successfully worked with your opponent on a project in the last 4 years?
That's 4 years. Yeah, the projects that have taken place in the city over the last 4 years, frankly, the mayor mentioned them. We've built a dog park. We've done a community garden, and he talks about block parties. There haven't been that many projects over the last 4 years, unfortunately. It's one of the reasons that I'm seeking to be the next mayor of the city of Beachwood. We work here. The mayor and I work very well. The mayor is a best person to me. We have no issues, but I have an issue with how the city is being managed.
Thank you, Mr. Berns. Mr. Horwitz?
I'll tell you the biggest project I've worked on with Councilman Berns, and that's hiring a fire chief. Councilman Berns knows the fire department, knows the police department, and he grew up in that fire department as a volunteer. And he was very helpful in the process of picking the current chief. And I've relied on him for other information dealing with safety forces. And frankly, I've always considered him a chair on pretty much everything the council does. That's how we become so successful, is we built a strong council and we all work together.
Thank you, Mr. Horwitz. Mr. Horwitz, Beachwood Place is a major driver for the city and its schools. How high of a priority is Beachwood Place on your agenda, and what will you do to maintain this tax revenue for the city and the schools?
Well, you're right. It's just an important piece of real estate. It really defines the city. We've done a lot in the last 4 years by changing the zoning code and improving planning and zoning code and the building code. We've set up a CRA, which basically takes the rest of commercial property, in Beachwood and will give a tax break to tax incentive to a developer coming in. We've set up other organizations. Our economic development department now is working with Beachwood's owners, the Brookfield, to try and bring in other national companies that may be interested in setting up building condominium, building apartments, building restaurant, building whatever you can imagine. But the most important thing is just to keep it successful. It is successful now after COVID. You look at the numbers of the sales and it's
Thank
the sales
you,
are very
Mr.
good.
Horwitz. Mr. Berns, the same question, please.
Yeah, I don't know that I can necessarily answer this in 60 seconds. Nonetheless, everybody needs to understand that Beachwood Place is owned by Brookfield Properties out of Toronto. If elected mayor, the first thing I will do is I will go visit Brookfield Properties in Toronto or have them come here or go wherever they want me to go. But I'm going to sit down with Brookfield and discuss this mall. This mall accounts for over 10% of the operating funds for the Beachwood City School District. It is imperative that we have these discussions with them. And there are two parts about this. What is the future for them? And we need to use every resource this city has to figure out how we can assist the mall owner to continue operating this mall. And secondly, is the security of the mall. And we need to make sure that the security of the mall is secure and safe for everybody to go to. And right now, the perception is it isn't. So we need to focus on that immediately.
Thank you, Mr.
Can I
Berns.
rebut that?
Rebuttal, Mr. Horwitz.
2 points. We have been for the last 4 years in regular contact with regular meetings with both General Growth and then Brookfield. Brookfield, the people who manage the mall and make the decisions about the mall are in Chicago and not Toronto. Second of all, and we have set up the environment where there can be further growth in the mall by the buildings we were talking about before. And third of all, for the last 4 years that I've been here, we have had regular police patrols, special patrols. We routinely work with all of the safety forces from the mall.
I'm sorry, Mr. Horwitz, but we have to move on. 30 seconds for the rebuttal.
Yes, thank you.
30 seconds.
It hasn't worked. Whatever it is, it hasn't worked. I'll go to Chicago. It doesn't matter where they are. It's not working. The security at the mall is not working. We need to do something different about it. And we will do something. We will get Brookfield through the table and do something. The city of Beachwood spends probably almost $750,000 a year in officers just for Beachwood Place Mall. Brookfield needs to participate in some form to assist us in making sure that mall is secure.
Thank you, Mr. Berns.
Can I do one
We're
more?
gonna stay with Beachwood Place for another question here or two. Mr. Berns, we're gonna start this one with you. What is your vision for Beachwood Place in the next 4 to 5 years from now?
Again, the city of Beachwood doesn't own the mall. Brookfield Properties owns over 200 malls across the country, and certainly they have some sort of vision. The idea is that we need to, as a city, use every asset we have to encourage them to spend money on that mall. They can spend money at Beachwood Place, or they can spend money at one of their other properties. They have a limited amount of funds. I don't know what the mall in 4 or 5 years will be a mall, but that is up to Brookfield. It's not for the city of Beachwood to decide. Thank you.
Okay. I think the question is, what would you like to see the mall if you had a vision for it?
Well, here, I would like the mall to remain a mall if that's possible. Again, that is up to Brookfield. That is not for the city of Beachwood to decide what's going to be there.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Berns. Mr. Horwitz, the same question, vision for Beachwood Place in the next
I
4 to
will
5
get
years.
to that. I want to just pick up on one point that in the last 4 years between our IT department and our police department, we have worked with the mall to get them to put in more cameras, to put in a gun sniffing dog, to put in license plate readers, and to also change their policies on unaccompanied minors, so they can't be in there as long as without parents. My vision is something that we're working on right now in economic development by our economic development consultant working with Brookfield and others he's worked with in the past, national developers, to try and bring in some other structure, be it a high-rise condominium that would overlook Acacia, a theater, a grocery store, a medical building that perhaps would connect to the Cleveland Clinic, but something else that would bring more foot traffic into that area that would also help reduce the crime. And it would really, we're looking to make it a mixed use area. We've changed the zoning code for that. And that's all that we've done in 4 years is set up the
Thank you,
environment.
Mr. Horwitz. So the next question is similar to that one. Is there another use for Beachwood Place? And you've started to speak about that, so you have another minute to keep going on that.
I hope there is never another use for Beachwood Place. As Mr. Burns says, you know, that's sort of the crown jewel of the city. And we rely on that. We call ourselves a premier city because we're the only city around that still has a Saks and a Nordstrom. But it certainly can be mixed use. It certainly can be more family friendly. It certainly there can be more of an environment. There were plans at one point, and they have not gone through with them to do a sort of, not a pavilion, but something like Legacy, where there's grass and a grassy area for people to have concerts and whatever. But the idea is to get people there. That's the bottom line. We've created that environment in the last few years, and we're going to try and bring Beachwood Place to the table with other developers and create that environment that will continue. I don't see it as anything other than a mall with other entities around it.
Thank you, Mr. Horwitz. Mr. Burns, is there another use for Beachwood Place?
There's, I'm sure, certainly other uses. Again, Brookfield is a developer and that's their job. They're good at the city of Beachwood. As much as I'm a developer, I don't develop properties like that. Nonetheless, 2013, the mall came to the city for a rezoning and asked for some out parcels to put into the mall for some restaurants. They had deals with Capitol Grill, which is now over Legacy. They had a deal with Seasons 52. They potentially had the Apple Store coming. Nonetheless, the city council at that time, which I was not on, didn't act quickly enough, and they lost those tenants to other shopping centers. Mr. Horwitz was on council at that time. Nonetheless, it would have kept them all relevant if those stores had moved in here. And again, Brookfield knows what to do. The issue is, do they want to spend the money in Beachwood? And we as a city need to encourage them to spend the money on this mall.
Thank you, Mr. Burns. Both candidates have made security and safety a part of their campaigns, acknowledging the need to increase security throughout the city. Mr. Burns first, what does that mean? Well,
Again, I've pointed out through this campaign that our safety ranking in Cleveland Magazine is now 74th in the region. A good portion of this really is in the commercial areas. People have asked me, my neighborhood is safe. Yes, your neighborhood is safe. The commercial areas, we have a huge spike in crime there. So we need to change our policing. It Beachwood Place, a pavilion, hotels. So we need to change that. We police chief, we now have a deputy police chief. We need to lean on them. We need to lean on other agencies in the area in Northeast Ohio to figure out how to solve this crime, to bring this down to a level that's not 74th in the region.
Thank you, Mr. Burns. Mr. Horwitz, what does that mean to you?
Well, before I answer that, I want to get right that is critical in this campaign because it's the cornerstone of Councilman Burns' campaign, and it's really a house of cards. There's many databases for crime reporting. The numbers reported to Cleveland Magazine contain raw data, the largest numbers. But for example, we might have 75 assault reports, but only 18 actual incidents. The same way Solon had 80 assault reports, but the number of incidents in Cleveland Magazine was 20. So this year with some new employees, the raw data was reported instead of the refined data as we've done in the past. I caught this 3 months ago, sent a letter to the magazine explaining our numbers would be no different than before. In fact, our actual crime reports were down 30%. In 3 months, Councilman Burns never called me or requested a safety committee meeting to discuss this. The Cleveland Magazine ranking means nothing because the proper refined data was not reported. All of this shows either Councilman Burns is at best unaware or at worst intentionally misleading us.
Thank you, Mr. Horwitz. The next question.
Well, can I have a rebuttal?
Rebuttal, yes, please.
Well, here, the safety director of the city, and something happened here then with these numbers. Either the numbers that were reported this year aren't correct, and the mayor is saying that they're correct, or the numbers that were reported in the previous years weren't correct. Either way, something's not being, the truth isn't being told then. So I don't know, this would be something for the mayor, but somebody's not telling the truth yet.
Thank you, Mr. Burns.
Can I go back?
Mr. Horwitz, rebuttal.
It's very simple. The numbers in previous years were correct. I have a letter that we've sent. We've analyzed these numbers for other cities where there is a higher number that is the number that's reported in one fashion, and it's reduced down for Cleveland Magazine. Because we had some new employees that weren't familiar with it, they didn't send in the right numbers. I'm not going to name the employees, and I'm not going to embarrass anybody because that's not the way I work. But that's what happened. So the number in Cleveland Magazine has zero validity because it's not compared to the other numbers that the other cities sent in.
Thank you, Mr.
You just
Horwitz.
can't have it both ways.
Thank you. Let's move on to the next question. The CJN and several other media outlets have reported on a myriad of lawsuits and settlements the city has defended itself against over the last 4 years. Mr. Horwitz, some of these have centered around your behavior in the workforce and the Rendon report that was made public at the beginning of your term. The CJN reported the cost in having the city defend itself in these lawsuits and settlements with alleged victims was more than $130,000. Last week, the CJN reported Beachwood is the first city to leave the Northern Ohio Risk Management Association in the 34-year history of NORMA. The city said it would save $66,520 on premiums in the coming year with a new provider. How do you respond to residents when justifying the more than $130,000 expense? And is your new coverage apples to apples? Mr. Horwitz first.
Okay, very quickly, I'm going to address that. We went out, we shopped for better policy. We left the insurance company. We saved $65,000. The issue of harassment, issue of the money that's paid, that's an issue that for $120,000, you have to talk to counsel and you have to talk to our law director because most of that was not attributable to decisions that I made. I've been an attorney for 40 years and an elected official for 26. I've had a long career supporting the public, and I've never had a complaint, an allegation, or a word said about my behavior. That changed in 2019 when the law department, under the council president, decided that they were going to conduct this irregular and financially wasteful process. Here's the facts. 7 council persons, including Councilman Berns, voted not to move forward on these allegations because there was nothing there. Hundreds of residents supported me. Every department in City Hall except law signed letters supporting me, which is on my website. And 3 community groups devoted to fighting harassment have endorsed me.
Thank you, Mr. Horwitz. Time is up. Mr. Berns.
It's a loaded question. First of all, as far as our insurance goes, this is a case of mismanagement. We were told back in March that we were potentially looking at other insurance agencies to replace Norma for whatever reason. We then got a quote back on September 13th. At that point, we already were essentially booted out of Norma. Norma, if you haven't seen, it mentioned that the city had serious internal and legal problems. They gave examples of discord and dysfunction about the city. They said that we faced legal issues, have had 5 law directors in 6 years. Beachwood's risk experience is going to go down anytime soon. Nonetheless, the issue is, are we getting the best policy now? The least expensive policy in insurance isn't the best policy. So is our new policy as good as our old one? I don't know. The proof will be when we go through this someday, depending on how many cases we have. We went from a $2,500 deductible to a $5,000 deductible.
Thank you, Mr. Berns.
Mr.
Mr. Horwitz, rebuttal, 30 seconds.
Okay, we rely on our law director, we rely on our finance director to make these decisions and make recommendations. The policy is equal or better to what we had. It's different than anyone deciding to check out a change in their car policy or their house policy. Let's make it very clear. When we talk about these lawsuits, everyone here wants to tie the lawsuits to me, which is absolutely not true. About 95% of the lawsuits that Norma is talking about have to do with other matters, other lawsuits, hundreds of thousands of dollars against our
Thank you,
city.
Mr. Horwitz.
30 seconds.
30-second rebuttal. Mr. Berns.
Council's job is to appropriate and look at the best deals. We only had one alternative with insurance. We didn't have a choice, so we went with PEP because we were given the only option on September 13th when our policy was up September 30th. We didn't have a choice because the administration didn't give us one.
Thank you, Mr. Berns. Mr. Berns, I'll start with you on this question. Do you have a plan, and if so, is it for controlling the increased population of deer and coyote throughout the city?
It's funny you asked this. We just had a meeting last evening about this. I don't know that you're going to find a difference necessarily between the mayor and myself. The mayor is working on a plan. There is a potential plan that's going to go into place, and if that works out after they do some calculations, we will move forward with the deer culling. Coyotes are not part of that right now. We have trapped coyotes, I know in the past, but certainly we will move forward with deer culling. I think regardless of whether the mayor stays in office or I become the mayor. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Horwitz. The same question.
Yeah, it's funny you should mention it because we just did this the other night. We've been looking at this for 4 years. We've done, in our offices, we've worked with Shaker and done research, Mentor and done research with them. We followed this. We surveyed the community about 2 years ago. It was 49-49 split as to whether or not we do anything. We just recently surveyed the community. It was closer to 60-40. At that point, we started working with Ohio Division of ODNR and Division of Wildlife. And basically, there is a plan. There's a process by which this is done. We presented it to council. We will be doing another survey of the deer, and we will present it to the people that need to approve our plan. And then we are hoping that between January and March, which is appropriate season, that we will start calling.
Thank you, Mr. Horwitz.
I have a follow-up there?
Rebuttal,
Yeah.
30 seconds.
The only issue I have with this is the second time we've done a survey in the last 2 or 3 years on deer culling. And this is a case of management. The mayor needs to either decide he wants to do deer culling and bring it to city council or not do it. But we don't need to do surveys every time we want to do something. That's not the way to govern the city of Beachwood.
Thank you, Mr.
Can I
Burns.
respond?
30 seconds, Mr. Horwitz.
That is unfortunately absolutely the way that the Ohio Department of Natural Resources, who has to approve the deer management program, says it must be done. You have to give them certain details, including a survey of your residents and what the percentages are. And then you have to show them things like what the service department has done in terms of picking up deer. That is the process. That is the legal process. It's not a question of doing surveys just random and for fun. That's the process.
Thank you,
you have
Mr.
to do.
Horwitz. Several residents have expressed concern in slow internet speeds throughout the city, aging sewers, and storm system causing flooding, as well as a few streetlights throughout the city, posing potential risk, especially along Green Road and other streets where people walk to and from shul or synagogue in the dark. Let's spend some time talking about infrastructure throughout the city. Horwitz, do you have a plan for increasing the speed of internet throughout the city to benefit residents and businesses?
Frankly, we have been to work with a company called Wow. They're in some of the other cities around us. We've tried to get them in. We have looked at the possibility of setting up our own fiber system. It's very expensive for us to become a utility and run our own fiber system. We have not had complaints about problems with internet speed. 5G is going in soon, and that's going to increase the speed. It's not something, quite honestly, that comes to my office frequently in emails or in calls. Most people seem to be very happy with their internet speed at this point.
Thank you, Mr. Horwitz. Same question, Mr. Burns.
Thank you. I have heard some complaints about slow internet speed. Frankly, on this issue, I don't know enough about it to give you the proper answer. I would reach out to people who may know something or other municipalities if they've done something and look at what they've done to increase their internet speed, and potentially we can do that. And the question is going to come down to where are we going to get funds to do this and do some of the other infrastructure programs you're going to talk about.
Thank you, Mr. Burns. Mr. Burns, recent storms have brought major flooding issues in certain neighborhoods throughout the city. What are your plans to address the aging structure in areas that are not already being addressed?
Well, the city has taken on a comprehensive plan to look at a 5-year storm sewer study. And we are currently addressing this. I don't know that the mayor is going to necessarily give you a different answer about this. This is his program, and I'm in support of it because I'm chairman of Public Works, and I've been in our meetings that we've jointly had. We've done 2 program projects this year. We have another very large project starting up on Beachwood Boulevard, starting very soon. We've awarded the contract for that. And when that's complete, at the same time, we're going to look at working more south of that area. We're also going to hopefully install a culvert on Green Road to alleviate some Bryden flooding, and hopefully at some point do some storm sewer work on Bryden as well. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Burns. Mr. Horwitz.
Well, and this is just another example of what leadership is about, because you have to be able to turn on a dime. And we have any kind of project for flooding involved in our capital improvements. But as we've had more and more rain in this community, it's become very clear. We've looked at the statistics, we've looked at the data. We have sometimes over 100 service calls for our department to come and check out flooded basements in 1 or 2 days. And so we were able to take some of our road money and start this program by testing for overflow. We now do have the 5-year capital improvement program. It included 50 backflow diverters to residents who were hit the hardest. And as Councilman Berns says, we've done Glen Hill and Community Union, we're working on Beachwood Boulevard. We hope that once it's in another 3 or 4 years, that we probably eliminate 80 to 90% of the flooding in Beachwood.
Thank you, Mr. Horwitz. Next question for Mr. Horwitz. Do you recognize a need for additional streetlights in the city? And if so, what does that look like and who will pay for that?
I recognized that 4 years ago. I recognized that driving down Green Road and seeing that the lights are on one side and UH side and not on our side. And we started trying to work with CEI on this. It turned out to be very expensive, and we looked for alternatives. And we came up with a concept of possibly doing sidewalk lights on Green Road, and also a smart city type where you could put in cameras, motion detectors, and everything else. We actually had everything in place to do a project, and we were going to do fiber down Green and Fairmont. We pulled that project. I pulled the project about 3 weeks ago. We were ready to give it out to the bidder. It was right at the time that we announced that GE Current was going to be coming into Beachwood. They have agreed to help us with their equipment, with their engineers. Ultimately, we are going to do Green Road and do the feeder streets, probably in the fashion of a sidewalk light as opposed to just a street light. But on Green Road, I would envision an actual street light.
Thank you, Mr. Horwitz. Mr. Berns, the same question.
Yeah, the idea of this, we have so many great institutions in the city of Beachwood, and GE Current is moving in, and this is one of them they specialize in is street lighting. The mayor mentions that he pulled this project when they moved in, but the mayor was actively pursuing them back starting in April. So he knew that they were coming in, yet we were prepared to give this project to another company, and we only received one bid for this $900,000 project. I urged the mayor not to do this and to hold off on this, and I'm glad that he did. But nonetheless, street lighting is an issue, and I plan on working on that over time to light up all of our side streets. Certainly, we can side streets that have poles going down them, and that'd be the easiest thing to do, and we got to get started doing that immediately. As far as who's going to pay for them, the city of Beachwood's going to have to figure out a way to pay for this.
Thank you, Mr. Berns. Rebuttal.
One quick point, we pulled, first of all, even though we were negotiating with GE and others, we weren't allowed to talk about it until that particular week. Second of all, we also found out there was another synagogue going into University Heights right on Green Road, and we realized there would probably be 300 more people walking back and forth on Green Road. And at that point, I said, the lighting that we were looking at, which was sidewalk lighting, is probably not going to be appropriate with that much a population going back.
Thank you, Mr. Horwitz. Next question, we start with Mr. Berns. Are there plans to alleviate traffic congestion around the Chagrin-Richmond I-271 corridor?
Well, there's been discussion about this for the last 4 years or longer. We engaged our city engineer with ODOT several years ago. I would love to see this project happen. We did go after federal funding because we made a fund from ODOT for $10 million. City council elected not to go forward with that 3 years ago. I was very disappointed. I voted in favor of that, and I'm hoping that city council will decide to move forward with the redesign of Chagrin-Richmond, the 271 corridor in the coming years. I want to see that project happen, and 90% of the revenue that the city of Beachwood brings in it from people who work outside of the city. Those people want to get to their offices. They want to get home and be with their families. It's imperative that we do something about the traffic at Chagrin and Richmond to get those people into work and out of work. There's other places they can go and work that don't have those same issues.
Thank you, Mr. Burns. Mr. Horwitz?
I think on this, we both agree. It is absolutely needed. It's a project that I've supported right from the beginning. It's gone down because council, for some reason, felt that whatever the reason, I don't want to go into it, but it didn't pass twice. We brought it back. I felt it was absolutely imperative because I'm trying to plan for the next 10 years and 15 years and 20 traffic. We're going to have a Hoosier opening up with 1,000 people there. We're going to have a lot more business in the park. We're going to have a lot of traffic. We have a lot of traffic right now. At this point, I'm excited because we believe we are number 3 on the list for state awarding of contracts. And we've moved up the ladder in the last, we moved up the ranking in the last year, I think, since nothing happened during COVID, improving bidding. So my understanding is we will probably get awarded funding for the bid specs and then probably the project afterwards.
Thank you, Mr. Horwitz. Mr. Burns?
I think it's important to note out that the $10 million that we were granted, that we turned down 3 years ago, was safety funding. And it was because the area in front of Crestmont Cadillac was at that time the 13th most prone accident area for a certain category in the state of Ohio. I'm sure that now we've moved up on that list, and maybe, as the mayor indicated, maybe we're number 3. It is imperative that we do this for no other reason, for safety. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Next question, we'll stay with traffic, Mr. Horwitz. A Mercantile Harbor Connector Road has been talked about for about 10 years. Are you in favor of that? And if so, how will you work with council to bring it to fruition?
Well, I'm absolutely in favor of it. I've been in favor of it since I was on council. I've been in favor of it since I've been the mayor. I can't go into a lot of details of where we are at this point. For those of you who know our economic development projects, we've recently sold the back third of our community service building to a company called Industrial Properties. They've leased it, part of it, to GE. We have sort of started working informally with ICP to look at other parcels, and they are interested in expanding their involvement with the city of Beachwood. I'm going to go out on a limb and say that within 4 to 5 months, we will probably hear some news that will be probably the biggest development we've had so far in the city, and it will include a future connector road.
Thank you, Mr. Horwitz. Mr. Burns?
When I was initially on council in 2011, we purchased a property on Mercantile to build this proposed connector road. At that time, the city of Cleveland would not sell us the property that we needed to build the connector road. In the last 4 years, 3 or 4 years, the city of Cleveland had offered us to sell us that property. We haven't acted on it. If nothing else, if we're going to build that road, we should be buying that property now. It is important we buy that property so that we can build this connector road, so that it'll spur more economic growth in the Commerce Park Mercantile area.
Thank you, Mr. Burns.
The only thing I can say is that we are acting on it. We are not buying land at the moment, but we are actively working on it, and actively not in the future, but in the very close future.
Thank you, Mr. Horwitz. Question is for you to start with, Mr. Burns, talking about GE. The relocation of GE Current from East Cleveland to Commerce Park is a major win for the city. As mayor, what were your plans to build upon that to further build up Commerce Park Area B?
Well, let me say, first of all, that I'm very excited that GE Current is moving into the city. This is a great asset for the city. We need to reach out to all of the property owners in Commerce Park Mercantile and see what they want to do with their properties. It is imperative that we have redevelopment there. There is one thing that's going to happen during COVID, and that is that you are still going to have light manufacturing going on. You cannot do that from home. In Commerce Park and Mercantile, that area makes a great use. That's how it started, and that's what it needs to revert back to now, is to light manufacturing. And we need to reach out to all those property owners and see if, what their plans are. Again, they own the properties, they'll determine what they want to do, but we need to see how we can assist them.
Thank you, Mr. Burns. Mr. Horwitz?
Yeah, from day one, my plan was to try and reimagine Commerce Park, and we're finally getting to that point. The key, and I've said this over and over, is this GE Current deal. When big companies like GE Current come to Beachwood, other companies follow. And GE Current is frankly will wind up being a bigger deal than Eaton because we get that money, we don't get half of that money. And when we sell off the rest of our, or at least ICP is interested in the rest of our service garage, that's 300,000 plus square feet that will go towards 500 to 700 employees. Eventually, and we disagree a little bit on this, we are looking to bring in high-tech, biotech businesses. We just talked about a company called Trailbridge the other day that does cell construction. I can't explain the whole thing, but they're moving into one of the properties. We do have to redo Commerce Park area.
Time is up on that question. The next question with you,
I think just.
but we have a rebuttal first.
Yeah,
from Mr. Berns.
Yeah. The idea, again, I am thrilled that GE Current is coming to the city of Beachwood, nothing against that. But the idea to say that GE Current is bigger than Eaton, I mean, it's from the truth. I mean, Eaton has a $300 million facility and lots of people work here. We only get half of the income tax from it. And unfortunately, our schools don't get any of the property tax. But Eaton brings a tremendous amount and a big value to the city of Beachwood. It keeps us on the map. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Berns. Okay. Mr. Horwitz, as recently as last city council meeting, there have been discussions about additional recreational features, as well as the removal of some, including a reported $4 to $6 million amphitheater, new basketball courts, pickleball courts, youth sports fields, outdoor exercise equipment, a state-of-the-art restroom near the dog park, and removal of tennis courts. If you are mayor, how do you prioritize each of these, and what will your plan be to move forward on each development with council? For this question, I will allow an extra 30 seconds for each of you to answer. Mr. Horwitz first.
First of all, let's understand that when the presentation was made by our new community services director, Derek Schroeder, was basically giving a wish list of things that he would like to see us do. Many of them are things that were in plans that we've had for years and years and years. Amphitheater is not a new concept. It goes back to our former mayor. So that's not a new concept. The bottom line is we're at a point where there's certainly a demand for pickleball. We can document that. There's certainly a demand for our community garden. There's certainly a demand for certain other recreational facilities. What I'd like to do, we had the overall presentation that one night and people latched onto it. What I'd like to do is survey the residents, including some of the younger kids, to find out what it is that they're looking for in the community. Is it fields? So we have one councilman that's very interested in baseball fields. We have many that are interested in pickleball. We have people that think the amphitheater is the greatest idea since sliced bread because bringing 500 to 700 people together for an evening or afternoon's entertainment. It builds a sense of community, which is something I'm very strong on. So the simplest way to do this is before we do anything, and I pledged to somebody the other night that I was talking to at the meeting, we will sit down, we will set up a survey to try and determine what the community really wants. If 4% want a skateboard.
Thank you, Mr. Horwitz.
Yeah.
Mr. Berns, the same question.
Thank you. Well, here again, we're talking about surveys, and that's just what I was saying. Frankly, what we need to do is we need to sit down with the schools and collaborate with them and figure out, because they own a lot of the property that we're using and potentially could use. We need to figure out what their plan is. The schools have other ideas potentially about consolidation of schools or other things. So we're not going to spend money on school property until we figure out what the schools want to do. But there are certainly things that people in the community have been asking for. Pickleball courts. We can do that. We need to move the community gardens, which is a great asset to the community. We need to move those, and we can do the pickleball courts. That's something we could do. Baseball fields, we talked about. Again, we need to work with the schools on that. The amphitheater, frankly, I'm sorry, but this came up because this is an election season, and it sounded, I think that the mayor believed that this sounded good, that this would get some votes to bring up this amphitheater. It wasn't city council who brought up this idea of a $46 million amphitheater. It was the administration who brought it up. We cannot be everything to everybody. We only have so much land. And maybe if we were going to do the amphitheater again, maybe it's a place to work in with the schools. But most importantly, on any of these things, we've got to figure out where the funds are going to come from. Because potentially with COVID and people working from home, the city has as much money as we currently bring in the future. So right now we need to maintain what we have before we start taking on new projects. Thank you.
Mr. Berns, thank you.
Respond.
Mr. Horwitz, 30 seconds.
First of all, I just want to say, we're not working in a vacuum. We have already approached the schools. We've already discussed with them. Frankly, honestly, the schools don't have a plan for what they want to do recreationally at this point. They're concerned about their own buildings before they're concerned about recreation. Pickleball is pretty much a given. We know we're going to do pickleball. We know we're going to remove 2 of the tennis courts. The rest of it, you keep saying, we don't need surveys. That's how you find out what the community is interested in. If we do a proper survey, we'll find out whether.
Thank you, Mr. Horwitz. 30-second rebuttal.
I don't think we ought to remove 2 of the tennis courts. Those tennis courts, I've seen them in the summertime. I've seen all 8 of them be used. We have room adjacent to the tennis courts to build the pickleball courts where the basketball courts are. We're going to have to find some place to relocate those basketball courts and the community gardens. But we ought to build four pickleball courts adjacent to the tennis courts and keep 8 tennis courts. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Burns. This question will start with you. Residents have expressed the need for the city to enforce stricter housing maintenance regulations to address issues, homes and yards that are not kept up on the exterior, as well as unkept trash containers. Is this a problem in the city? And if so, how would you address it?
Well, I've heard that it's a problem in the city because residents have contacted me about it. We have ordinances on the books. Unfortunately, we just don't enforce the ordinances. So as mayor, it would be my intent utilizing the Beachwood buzz to advise people that we are going to start enforcing those ordinances. And the first time it happens, we'll give them a warning. And after that, we will start citing residents if they're not going to follow the ordinances of the city of Beachwood. It's as simple as that. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Burns. Mr. Horwitz.
Yeah, I mean, it is a definite problem. I receive emails all the time from residents next door, especially for rental properties. There are a lot of absentee landlords of rental properties that do not maintain a property. As a matter of fact, just over the somebody wrote me, I went over to look at the house. It was on East Silsby. It was mowed, but the rest of the house looked not in good condition. We have this discussion on a regular basis with our building commissioner. We do have inspectors that go out. Should we address it in perhaps another way? We need to think this through, but yes, I would be in favor of more aggressive attention to it. We do try and have respect for our residents. If they have a problem and can't afford a painter right at the moment, or there's financial issues or a problem in getting a workman to do something, we will give them a couple extra weeks or a couple extra months till it's done. But we would like every house to look in good
Thank you,
shape.
Mr. Horwitz. Next question, we'll start with Mr. Horwitz. Does the city have a need for additional condominiums, single-family homes, such as is being built in other cities to address the needs of those 55 years and older?
Absolutely. I can't tell you how many people talk to me, and the beauty of this city is that people move here when they're in their 20s and 30s, and they literally stay here till they're in their 90s. And there are many people where a spouse has lost a husband, whatever, they need a smaller, 2 reasons. They need a smaller property and some property they don't have to maintain. We also have young families that can't afford $350,000 and $400,000 and $450,000 to buy a house. So we definitely need some kind of condominium. We definitely need perhaps some sort of townhouse arrangement. The issue is trying to find the land because we do have new houses going up. We have almost 10 houses a year that go up in our community, and housing prices have gone up 38% in 5 years. So it's a need. Finding the land is difficult.
Thank you, Mr. Burns.
Yeah, I'm in agreement. We certainly need more housing options in the city. But land is at a premium. There just is not a lot of vacant land in the city. Such as me, I bought out and tore it down and built a new home to replace it. That's, I believe, where the mayor is talking about houses a year that are occurring. I've built senior housing in other communities adjacent to us for 55 and older. If there were someplace in this city to do it, that would be great. Unfortunately, the one thing I can't promise you as mayor is I cannot make more land in the city of Beachwood.
Thank you, Mr. Burns. Mr. Burns, what specific plans do you have to make sure Beachwood's increasingly diverse population feels united as one community?
Well, my 3 children attend Beachwood High School. I mentioned that in my opening. My kids are friends with lots of other kids of various backgrounds. I think that a lot of this comes into the schools. running for mayor, not for schools. And I think that the schools do a very good job of doing that. People are attracted to the city of Beachwood for frankly, for our diversity, for our proximity to hospital systems. And I think that frankly, the city is doing a very good job on that. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Burns. Mr. Horwitz.
Well, diversity, community is one of the things that is absolutely a cornerstone of what I stand for as the mayor. I went to school here, graduated in 71. You can figure out how old I am. My kids graduated from school here. It has been a diverse community. It's getting more diverse. I think our numbers are something like 68, 14% Black population and 11% Asian. Probably the biggest thing that I've done and what I really felt strong about was block parties. You know, we can joke about it, but I've been to these block parties where I've had people say to me, I've lived here 4 years and I just found out who my neighbors are. Block parties bring people together. There's a reason that Shaker's been doing it for 50 years, because they bring people together. Things that having the pool, having Barkwood builds a sense of community. And that was another reason why Barkwood was such an important project, not just for the dogs, but for the people that go there, because you meet people, you have a common interest in dogs.
Thank you, Mr. Horwitz. Mr. Horwitz, as many of our readers are aware, regionalism is quite common in many areas. What are your thoughts on regionalism for Beachwood, specifically related to the Chagrin Valley dispatch services?
Well, I'm a supporter of regionalism, and I think nothing showed that more than our response to the COVID vaccinations when I found out that the only way the vaccines right in the beginning was to go through the Berea Fairgrounds. And I called Terry Allen, who was in charge of the Board of Health. I said, we've got a fire station here with 4 bays and we can host you. And we ultimately wound up doing, I think, 6 or 7 days of vaccines and help 7,000 residents, scatter 7,000 in the area, get vaccines. If there's a way to help the region, I'm always in favor of it. I don't look at us as a little kingdom by ourselves. We just loaned a fire truck to the Heights for 2 months. But anything we can do, I work with mayors and teachers, anything we can do to be part of it. Going back to the CCOM question or the Chagrin Valley, we have our own dispatch system. If you talk to people within the system, and I'm talking about firemen, policemen, people who understand it.
Thank you, Mr. Horwitz.
It's better
Thank
to
you, Horwitz.
be
Time's up
in
on
your own
that.
system. Sorry.
Mr. Burns.
I'll continue where Mr. Horowitz was on the dispatch, because I think he knows where I am, and anybody who knows me in the city knows where I am. I am us having our own dispatch. Again, I was a volunteer firefighter for the city. I understand how this works. I've listened to radios from other municipalities. Our dispatch center does Beachwood and Pepper Pike, and certainly I'm open to having other communities join us. I do not want to be the Chagrin Valley Dispatch Center. They have 26 communities, I believe. I think that they are way too big, and I would have no intent of ever taking us there. Again, this is like an insurance policy, and you can always find something for less, but I don't know that it's better. And dispatch it's imperative that it be better, and it is in Beachwood.
Thank you, Mr. Burns. Mr. Horwitz,
Can I
30
just add that
seconds.
it's not even a rebuttal, it's an agreement. We're both in agreement. We need to keep our own center because those dispatchers know the streets, the people they're dispatching, and it's just a much better.
Thank you, Mr. Burns. Beachwood is home to many aging residents. Do you plan to offer this aging generation services that are not currently being offered? And if so, what are they?
Certainly, any services that can be offered to our senior citizens are important. We have a director of that department, and I would work with him and the other people in that department to determine what new ideas. Derek Schroeder is new to the city. He came from Twinsburg, and certainly he's got other ideas to bring ideas to the city. And I'm open to any and all ideas that he's got or residents want to bring to the city. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Burns. Mr. Horwitz.
Yeah, one of the things we are absolutely outstanding at is providing services to seniors. And I can't wait till we get our community center open and start. We are going to start bringing the seniors back for luncheons and for meetings and for Maj and for everything else. There's a lot out there. I go to conferences and conventions, National League of City program. There's an awful lot out there. AARP partners with a lot of cities programs. There's senior telehealth, there's mental health services that we can provide. We already do an amazing job of providing rides to doctors and to the store and to the bank. The biggest thing is, and we were doing wellness checks during COVID just so people weren't alone. And the loneliness is really the hardest part. We can through our senior services, through our community service, help seniors get through being lonely, being by themselves. But we do an awful lot right now.
Thank you, Mr. Horwitz. Mr. Horwitz, how would you improve the transparency of city government?
Well, I think we're pretty transparent as it is. When I was on council, I was one of the 2 or 3 councilmen that fought right from the beginning to our meetings. I mean, not only did I think it was necessary for transparency, but the technology was, and a lot of the older councilmen just didn't want to broadcast. And I thought that's absolutely the way it should be done. School boards were doing it, councils were doing it, and this is only what 5, 6 years ago. And finally, we were able to do the meetings by online. Everything we have is basically transparent unless it's a situation where it's not allowed under the sunshine law. So when people say transparency, I'm available by phone all the time. You can talk to me about issues. You can talk to the councilman about issues. We broadcast everything, and if possible, we have community meetings and public meetings so that we can meet with residents and let them know what's
Thank
going
you,
on.
Mr. Horwitz. Mr. Burns?
Yeah, I'll save you the time on this. I don't think there's anything in the city really that we don't do that's very transparent. I don't know if there's anything really more to add there. I'm open to suggestions again, if somebody has something that they think that we're not doing properly, but otherwise I think that we're fairly transparent. Thank you.
Okay, Mr. Burns, if you were to receive a $1 million grant to use for the city, any one, how would you use it?
I would probably utilize this potentially for either street lighting or storm sewer improvements in the city. Those are some of the things that frankly we hear from residents the most. And I think that those are our greatest needs right now. I mean, we've got to take care of the stormwater issue that we talked about earlier. So I think I would apply it to that one of those issues. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Burns. Mr. Horwitz?
I want to say amphitheater, but somebody's going to attack me on it. All of these are good. Any place, the storm sewers, the lighting, anything we can do for our residents in terms of helping them, expanding, for instance, our senior rubbish pickup to maybe lower the age on that. We have a project we're working on now to try and put call boxes in the parks. We can use the money for something like that. Anything related to safety, anything related. And also, frankly, anything related to economic development, because economic development, a lot of people don't realize that 85% of the money that we spend comes from the businesses we have. So if we can beautify Commerce Park and put in some pocket parks or put it towards a surface parking structure or something to bring more businesses in, that'll reap benefits for the schools in the city. So there's a dozen places I can find $1 million.
Thank you, Horwitz. We've reached the questions for this evening and will now proceed with closing statements. Mr. Burns, you have 2 minutes and it begins now.
Thank you. As your mayor, I will restore the reputation of Beachwood. I would always act with respect towards the citizens, my peers, and city employees, and honor the office of mayor. I will work hard to restore morale of our public employees. I will work hard to enhance the safety of our citizens. I will work to improve our roads and infrastructure. I will work to promote the quality of life of our seniors. Nobody has all the answers because managing the city is a moving target, but I identify the resources and engage different parties within the community to find the answers. I am proud to be by former mayor of Beachwood and 8 former members of city council. I believe that they have endorsed me because they recognize my ability to work cooperatively and collaboratively with other elected city officials. Again, I appreciate everyone for listening. I know this has been a lot. I want to thank Mayor Horwitz for engaging in a meaningful conversation about our city. Obviously, we have differences of opinion, but I hope that I have demonstrated that I have the knowledge, skill set, and the ability to use resources to manage the city of Beachwood for the best interest of all in the community. I respectfully hope that you will vote on or before November 2nd. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Berns. Mr. Horwitz, please provide your closing statement.
I started out tonight by telling you the community is everything. It's what makes our schools strong, our residents happy, and our neighborhoods feel like home. Throughout the last 4 years as mayor, I worked tirelessly to strengthen our city today and plan for years to come. Now I'm overseeing dozens of programs that I started to increase public safety, expand city services, improve infrastructure, and create economic development to keep our tax base strong. Because of my efforts, we're making strides in sustainability, increasing the representation of women and minorities in the city workforce, and creating new partnerships with schools, businesses, and the Jewish Federation to keep our community institutions secure. With so much progress and so much in progress, I'm asking for 4 more years so we can finish this important work together. Let's not delay or disrupt what we've worked so hard to build, risk it on someone untested with no plan. Success doesn't happen by accident. As mayor, my elected leadership experience as former president of city council and school board and as an attorney has made a difference. I've hit the ground running and managed through everything from negotiations to a deadly pandemic. I built a team of talented city employees, and most important, I've listened, advocated, and fought for you every step of the way. This is a job that pulls you in many directions, but my focus is on serving you and your families. If you have any more questions after tonight, please visit my website, mayorhorwitz.com, or please give me a call at 216-403-6868. Again, 216-403-6868. At the end of the day, we may not agree on every issue, but I promise you will not find anyone more responsive to your concerns or committed to moving our city forward. Thank you for allowing me to serve this community, and thank you for your vote.
Thank you, Mr. Horwitz. Thank you both for your time this evening, and thank you to our viewers for joining us. Early voting in Cuyahoga County began this morning, and Election Day is Tuesday, November. Visit cjn.org for more information about this race and the other local races and issues in this election. Good night.